Let's start by running a validation on a P&ID model, followed by a validation of the entire project. This will allow us to compare how our P&IDs and models align. The first step is to run a validation on the P&ID. To do this, we right-click on P&I drawings and select Validate. The validation process scans through all database components in the drawing, and we can review the results. I'll dock the validation window and temporarily hide the tool palette to get a clearer view. The validation highlights some non-terminating lines which aren't acceptable in a real-world P&ID. However, since this isn't an actual P&ID, we're not too concerned. To avoid seeing these flagged issues repeatedly, we can right-click on them and choose Ignore. The ignored errors will be moved to a separate section, meaning we don't need to address them further. Next, the validation points out a base AutoCAD object, a polyline which appears as a viewport. Since we know this is intentional, we can right-click and mark it as ignored. Now, let's address unconnected components. The validation shows that a tank has 3 nozzles, but only one is connected. In reality, all nozzles must be accounted for, even if it means capping them with a blind flang. Clicking on the nozzle in the validation list zooms in on the exact issue, making it easier to address. Now that we've validated the P&ID, let's move on to validating a piping model. I'll open a model, right-click on Plant 3D, and select Validate. The validation summary presents similar issues to the P&ID validation, unconnected components. Since these aren't critical at the moment, I'll ignore them for now. One specific issue flagged is an unconnected vessel. This needs to be addressed because in a real-world scenario, all vessels must have proper connections. Additionally, the validation highlights a placeholder part, which occurs when an item is missing from the spec. In this case, a 2-inch beveled elbow was placed instead of the correct socket weld. This placeholder may seem fine in the model, but it will be flagged in an ISO drawing. By running the validation, we can detect these issues early and replace placeholder parts with correct spec components. Now, let's validate the entire project. By right-clicking on Chapter 11 and selecting Validate Project, we can see the same issues from individual drawings, along with a new comparison between the P&ID and the model. Reviewing the validation summary, we find unmatched P&ID items, meaning certain components exist in the P&ID but not in the model.